Welcome to the Game of Life podcast, where we bring you inspiring softball stories, insightful tips from coaches and players, and explore how the game transcends its boundaries to become a metaphor for life. Whether you're a sports enthusiast, a casual fan, or someone just looking for inspiration, you're in for a treat. We'll unravel the tales that go beyond the scoreboard. Discover how perseverance and hard work on the field translates into resilience in your daily challenges. Learn about teamwork, leadership, and the unwavering spirit that fuels success, not just in sports, but in the game of life. Allie, I always talk about how meeting people and connections in the real world is so important to what we're trying to do and accomplish. And a couple weeks ago, I was able to volunteer at a Montana Fouts camp, and Bailey Dowling was there, and we got talking, and I asked her to come on the podcast to tell her story and give some insight about softball and her future and what she wants to do. And well, here she is. So Bailey, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's so crazy how the softball world is so small and just everyone that you get to meet throughout. So I think that's really cool. And thank you for having me again. Um, my story is super crazy, not anything that anybody could ever imagine. Honestly, I feel like anything that you could think about could happen going through and playing softball. That's what I went through.
Yeah.
Um, I grew up in a really small town in St. Joseph, Illinois, and my softball career started out there. Played on a local travel ball team. I actually didn't even want to play softball to start. My mom and dad forced me to. I was so shy because I'm the only child. And once I stepped foot on that field at practice, and I always say I dove, but I probably just fell because I was so young. But once I got dirty, I loved it. And the better I became at it, the more confident I became. And that's just where my heart went to. So played travel ball with the local team there and then moved up to Chicago Beverly Bandits and then got to experience playing on the junior USA women's team for a summer and played on a team, travel ball team out of Georgia, the Georgia Impact. And then I got to live out my dream playing softball at the University of Alabama. So it's been a crazy ride.
You make it sound like in 2 minutes, like, yeah, that's it
No.
right there. Like that's all there was to it. Uh talk about when you said you were joking how you fell down or dove for the first time and got dirty, and then you fell in love with the game. When you were playing with a local travel team, was your goal or your parents' goal or your goal, was it to just keep moving up, or did that just kind of happen because of how much you loved the process in the game?
Yeah, so for me, I just wanted to keep playing always, like all the time. I'm not kidding. I would have lessons, like an hour and a half lesson, and then I'd have like a 3 hour practice all within the same day. I just did it because I loved it. And then eventually, as I got older and we moved, we realized like that's really something I wanted to do. And I grew up in St. Joseph, Illinois. That's like 15 minutes from the University of Illinois. And so we always watched college softball. And when I really realized that's what I wanted to do, then that's when my parents kind of took me to another travel ball team to get more exposure and kind of just figured out my dreams from there. But I remember having a chalkboard in my room. My dad, he's a construction worker, so of course he did all this for me, but he took just like a couple boards and threw them up on the wall and then got like chalk paint and gave me a little chalkboard and I would just write like my top 5 dream schools every single week. And you're so young at that age. At first it was like my favorite colors. So like I had crazy teams up there. And then once we started really like paying attention, because I'm not kidding, I would have DVDs and films of just games that we would rewatch over and over again. And I was like, okay, like we're gonna narrow it down a little bit to like who I really like. But yeah, I think my parents just kind of followed me. And once they realized like I was pretty decent at softball, then they thought we could do something with it.
Do you remember kind of a time or, specific time where you were like, this is really what I want to do? Like, yes, I'm having fun, but I know I want to do this at a super, super high level. Or was it, when you look back, was it just kind of gradual?
It was pretty gradual. I mean, I don't know. I was the only child, so I kind of just
Did
went with
whatever.
my parents
Yeah.
everywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
they were like, "Hey, like, do you want to keep playing?" I was like, "Heck yeah. Like, let's do this." And they were like, "Do you want to play in college?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so, yeah, it was pretty gradual. And then it became pretty real once, because the rules were different back then. I was in like sixth and seventh grade when I was getting recruited and going on visits. So once that hit, then it was real to me. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was pretty gradual.
So I'm curious about that too with the rule change. Like, did you realize the magnitude of kind of what was happening? I mean, you're sixth, seventh grader, you're like, this is cool, right? Like all these coaches are at my games. I guess, like, how did you come to terms with what was happening at that age?
I have never been someone, unfortunately, I'm trying to work on this, but who just takes a step away and sees like the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of living in the moment. I was like, this is cool. Like, I have Chelsea Spencer coming to my softball games and watching me and my team play. I was like, that's awesome. I love Oregon. And I was like, Patrick Murphy, oh my gosh, like, he is the coolest guy in the world. I don't know how I'm going to play now because he's at our games. And I wish that I could have, like, just stepped away and realized everything, but I was kind of just enjoying it. Like it was fun. And all my teammates would come up to me and be like, "Hey, guess who's here today?" Like it was just so much fun.
Do you feel that's a testament to how much you just love the process? Because I think unfortunately so many players, coaches, parents get caught up in what might happen. They forget you just have to love it. Like literally down to your core. And it sounds like you did.
I definitely did, for sure. We always talked about knowing your why. Back then, I never knew my why of why I played it. It was just, I just played it because I loved it. And eventually, you have to figure that out. Like when you get into college and things, really hit the fan and you have to figure out why you're playing it, like you need to know that. But back then, I just enjoyed it and I loved it. And I was just thankful that my parents could take me to all the games that I had.
That's amazing. So moving forward a little bit, I guess, to high school and then to college, I guess, what was your recruiting timeline like? So when did you know that you were going to play at Alabama? And then I guess how many years in high school were you playing knowing that you were going there? I mean, that must have been kind of cool being able to follow them, knowing that, you were going to be on that stage soon.
Yeah. So Murr recruited me, I think, when I was in seventh grade, maybe, definitely eighth grade though. I went on my visit when I was in eighth grade to Alabama. And then I wanted to commit like then and there. I told my parents, I was like, this is where I want to be, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And Murph had told my parents when we were all sitting in the clubhouse, he was like, I refuse, like, it's a rule of mine. I don't let players commit to me until they get to high school. Like, it's just, they're too young. And it's just like a respectful thing. And I respect him to this day for that because, I mean, clearly they changed the rules for a reason. So once it was July 15th, it was between July 10th and 15th, one of those days. And I remember we were on our way to a softball tournament. It was me and my dad, and we had a couple of my teammates with me. And my Murph had called my dad in the car and was like, "Hey, have Bailey give me a call when you guys get to the hotel." And my dad had no idea how to take that because literally 2 days ago, we were at a softball tournament in Chicago, and somebody had went around telling college coaches that I had already committed to Alabama.
Oh,
And Jared Glasgow at the time had actually went up to my mom at the tournament and gave her a hug and was like, "Hey, tell Bailey congrats. I'm happy she's happy, whatever. And my mom was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, he committed to Alabama. And my mom was like, no, she didn't. And he was like, oh, then I can't be talking to you right now. Like, I have to go. And so my
Wow.
parents were freaking out that that had gotten back to Murph, and he had thought that came from us because we didn't say anything. It was just somebody else, running their mouth about it. And so when Murph had called my dad and said that, my dad was flipping out and was like, okay. And he didn't know what to do. And so then we got to the hotel and I gave Murph a call and he offered me. And I was sitting there and he was running down the list of like all the information and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, welcome to the family. And I was like, I don't know what you just said, but I'm in. Like, I'm in. And then I was like, yeah, now I committed. So it was a crazy story, but it all worked out great.
Other people just knew your decision before you did, I guess.
Right?
It's crazy.
So,
Yeah.
so how was it? How was it in high school knowing that's where you're going? Because let's face it, when you commit to something like that, I don't want to say there's a target on your
There's a
back,
lot
but
of eyes on you. Yeah.
there's a lot of eyes on you. Yes, thank you, Ellie. That's a better way to put it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was fun for me. I loved it because that was my dream since the third grade. I mean, I wrote a letter about it for school saying how my dream was to step into the box and hear the crowd chanting my name. And so that was always my dream. So I loved it. Being from a small town, there wasn't a lot of people that truly understand or like understood me leaving and like getting out, if that makes sense, because you're from a small town, a lot of people just stay. And that was always my dream was to get out, like I love my family and I love my parents, but being the only child, I didn't want to stay there. Like that's just not my heart wanted to be out and about and adventuring and all that good stuff. So um I think it was just hard because my friends didn't understand it. And I had to learn at a young age how to say no to things, whether that was hanging out, going to birthday parties, going to a school dance, whatever. And so in high school, that was easy for me because I knew I was going there. That was my dream. And I knew what it took to get there. So it was easy for me to say no. But, I really figured out who my true friends were quickly from doing that. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun though. I had a lot of teammates, past teammates who went to like Illinois State and Illinois and some other like colleges just around home. And so it was nice to have people like that because obviously they're chasing their dreams too. And actually one of them was Morgan Day. She went to Illinois State and then transferred to Oklahoma State. So it was really cool to like see her live out her dream and both being from like small town Illinois. So
Yeah.
it was
I think
fun. It was a lot, but it was good.
that's awesome. I think going back to your point too of, learning how to say no to things, it just goes that you have to love the game if you're going to play at that level. Because I think what I see with some young girls is they almost start to resent the game because it's their parents telling them no, or they'd rather do something else. And I think it's just if you love it, those decisions become a little bit easier. So just to your point too, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, definitely.
When you left your local travel team, did was there some resentment from other teammates? Did people not understand why you wanted to go to another level to play? Like, were they saying we're friends, we could be here and play together our entire careers? Was there any of that, or did they understand?
Unfortunately, there was a lot of resentment. And people grow and people change, and God always tells you to forgive them. And I do, I really do, because I'm friends with them to this day. Um, but it was just, I don't, not a jealousy. It's just, again, I don't think they really understood that being from a small town, my only goal was to get exposure. And at the end of the day, you can't chase your dreams and live out and be who you want to be when you're trying to help other people and bring them with you. And unfortunately, And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just when I'm trying to get somewhere, I can't have somebody else coming with me because our dreams aren't the same. So when we're from a small town, our travel team is brand new pretty much. We've only played for a couple of years. The girls are great, families are great because again, we all grew up together, but we don't have that name to get into these exposure tournaments where Oregon, Oklahoma State, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Florida, like where they're all going. And I needed to be on a team that gave me that. And so I'm thankful that I had parents that helped me through that because I mean, I'm what, like 13, 14, and I don't know how to navigate these things. They knew that I needed that. I didn't. I was just playing to have fun. And I was like, oh, hopefully the coaches will come. Like, I
Yeah.
had no idea how that stuff worked. And so my parents kind of realized that and helped. And yeah, unfortunately, it just kind of didn't go very well with a lot of people. And um, that definitely got taken out. I kind of blocked it out of my head, I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, being tripped in the hallways in high school, being said stuff when you walk by people, just not very nice things. And eventually, I think when, again, like I said, like people grow and um, they kind of realize like the bigger picture of things and like maybe just treating someone badly because they're not doing what you want them to do necessarily, isn't the right thing, um, then that's where a lot of tables turned. But yeah, unfortunately, that did not go well, but it definitely made me who I am today because I was facing adversity, when I was 13 at that point. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I mean, good for you for listening to
Yeah.
yourself too. And I think, where you ended up in your career speaks for itself that you probably made a good choice in that moment. So I know it can be really hard to your point when you're 13, 14 years old and oh my gosh, these girls are gonna be mad at me. And that seems like the biggest thing in the world at that time. But I think, looking back, like you said, it seems like you have a really good perspective on it too.
yeah. Yeah, and that's all from my mom too. I mean, obviously my dad, I love him to death, but my mom, just girl hanging out. I mean, I'm her only daughter. So me and her are best friends. And so talking about everything, she always just helped me through that. I mean, I would come home from high school and be like, why am I getting tripped in the hallways? Like, that's stupid. I just fell down in front of this boy that I like. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen.
My life is over. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she just, talked me through a lot of stuff and really helped me handle it. And I don't want to say not necessarily like humble is the word, but like kind of teaching me to be the bigger person. And when you learn that at an early age like that, that really helped me navigate like who I want to be and like who I want to be surrounded by.
It's it's super important because if you can take those lessons from sports and bring them into life, you're ahead of the game. I mean, the business world, relationships, family, anything that's important to you, there's going to be people that may think they have a better idea of how you should play out your life. And the sooner you actually can understand, no, I'm going my speed, my direction, my journey, the better off you were. So good for you. And it's nice you had some family support because sometimes people either don't understand that or don't have the support.
Yeah, that makes me really sad too. And that's really why I like doing this stuff and like getting everything out in the open, not just about my journey, but
Right.
so that girls know that they're not alone. Like you could it could be something so small, whether, I mean, granted, mine was big, changing teams and my whole town hates me. I mean, that's a little dramatic, but, you know, or you could just be injured. Like, I just want people to know, like, they don't need to feel alone. Like, somebody has gone through it at one point and somebody can help you through it.
Yeah. Well, speaking going through a journey, let's pivot a little bit to your college career. Good segue, good segue there. So, do you want to talk a little bit about your transition from high school to Alabama? I guess let's focus on that first month to start. Like, was it what you thought? Was there anything that kind of shocked you right away? What was that like?
It was a definite whirlwind for me. Anything that happened on the softball field, I was there for. Loved it. Murph talking, granted, when he spoke about things, it was very quick. Like when he's explaining a drill, you're going straight into it. I don't have time to think, and I'm a thinker. I'm like, it's my blonde coming out in me a little bit. I'm like, okay, so this is what we're going here. So I'm going there, like whatever. And it's so weird because in a game, I don't think about anything. It just naturally happens. But in practice, when he's going over this stuff, I'm like, what is he saying? Like, somebody just slow him down for me. But once we got into it, like I was good. So on the field, it was great. It was everything off the field. I had no idea how the dining hall worked. We have an athletic dining hall for all the athletes. Football has their own separate one. Now, the two are connected. So, like, the football building is connected to our dining hall. First day, I walked in the football facility. First day, all these football players, I mean, they're huge. It's Alabama football. I walked straight in there with my friend, who's also on the softball team. And they're all looking at us like, what are you guys doing? And one of the ladies, bless their soul, was like, sweetheart, it's the other door. And I was like, oh, sorry, my bad. So I was completely lost, dazed and confused. Had no idea that there was mandatory like rehab treatment. Never done that in my life. Had no idea. Got in trouble with that a couple times because I didn't know I was supposed to show up, didn't know where to go. Um, so yeah, everything off the field, crazy. Was a big transition for me and learning time management. Not necessarily time management, but just like asking questions to figure out things before. Because, like, again, clearly I was late to rehab because I didn't know where I was supposed to go. Like,
That'll do
I
it.
should
Yeah.
have just asked somebody to help me. um, but yeah, just little stuff like that. And then like going to class and like kind of figuring all that stuff out. Cause I mean, college is way different than high school. Like you really have, I mean, you don't have any time, honestly, to do anything. But like when you're going to class, it's like you could really do whatever you wanted, unfortunately, because you don't have somebody looking over your shoulder telling you to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, as for softball though, is great. I remember putting on my cleats and like looking out on the outfield wall and it said Crimson Tide and I was like, this is always where I've wanted to be.
How are the upperclassmen when you got there your freshman year? Because I know that can really make or break an experience. You kind of make that process easier. Do you feel like, that was really helpful for you?
I thank God for COVID. Unfortunately, I know it hurt a lot of people, but that gave me our super senior class back. And I would not be the player I would be without Claire Jenkins because she was the shortstop there before I got there. And she helped me. I mean, to this day, she's my role model. Like, we still talk randomly when she gets in. Well, last year when I was still playing, she would come to Tuscaloosa and we would always go out and have something to eat, like whatever, just catch up. And so it's always nice. But yeah, no, without her, I would not be anywhere close to what I was on the field because she taught me the ins and outs, how to navigate things, how to be a leader, how to deal with Murph, and not deal with him, but like understand him because it can be very hard when he's talking about something on the field and he means something else. And I'm like, where are we going here? What do we mean? Um, but yeah, her and Bailey Hempel, um, those were my girls. They helped me out so much. I mean, seriously, my favorite story was, unfortunately, it was embarrassing, but we were all in our positions on the field, infield, outfield, catcher, pitcher, everybody. And we're working on cuts and relays.
Yeah.
And my brain was just gone that day. I don't know where it went. I don't know if I was getting too much information, but I couldn't even understand the simplest relay. I, I knew where I was going, but if he would have asked me a question, no words would have came out of my mouth, and they sure didn't. He asked me what I was doing
Yeah.
or something, and I just looked at him like a deer in headlights. I didn't say anything. And no matter what, the number one rule is even if Murph chews you out, yes, sir. So you always speak. and it's always respectful. And I just looked at him like a deer in headlights. No idea. Had no idea. I didn't even know where I was at. I was so lost. And Claire was next to me, and she literally ran over to me and was like, "Yes, sir. Like, just say something, Bailey. Just say something. Like, just say something." And she said it so many times, she started yelling at me. And I started shaking my head and I was like, "Yes, sir." That wasn't even, he asked me a question. I just said, "Yes, sir." And yeah, I got yelled at pretty good that day, freshman year. And then afterwards, we always do like a own it and like a props and own it. So you can give a prop to somebody if they did good, or if, like whatever, or you could do an own it. So like that day I owned not saying anything. And everybody just started laughing because naturally, as a freshman, you have no idea what you're doing. But I would not have been able to get through it without Claire. So thankfully, I did have our super seniors.
Yeah, I feel like that just like, is a good emulation of being a student athlete. Sometimes, some days you just like malfunction, like for lack of
Yes,
better
that's
words.
the
Like,
perfect word for it.
I don't know. I've definitely had those too, but I completely understand where you're coming from. But again, it's like your teammates picking you up is the best thing ever to be a part of.
Yeah.
So when you came to Alabama, did you know what position you'd probably play? Did they recruit you as a specific position? Could you play anywhere? Like I'm just curious. A lot of kids always say, "Oh, I'm a shortstop. I'm a third baseman. I'm an outfielder. I'm a pitcher." I mean, pitchers obviously are a different breed, but would you have played anywhere? Did you know what you were going to play?
So Murph's biggest thing, besides person first, athlete second, it kind of goes with that though, is mudita. And so having vicarious joy in somebody else's success and learning that when you realize it's not all about you, you've figured it out. And so part of that was coming in there, being open to wherever they put you. And I only played shortstop my whole life, pretty much. I mean, granted, I played third base when I was in like rec ball, but I only played shortstop. I didn't even know second base. Like, I took ground balls there, but when I played there in a game, I was like, I don't know. I'm gonna have to think this one through. Shortstop just came naturally to me. And so when I got there, I did play shortstop. I remember our first game ever, and I was the last one warming up hitting, and it was with Murph. Like he was just throwing front toss. And he came up to me. He stopped like midway through the front toss and he was like, "You're playing shortstop this game." And I was like, my heart just stopped. Like, oh my God. Like I have to tell somebody. um, and so I did play shortstop for a while, I think. And then I just got in my head with a lot. We had a practice where I just got drilled in my face, like absolutely drilled. And I think that just really messed with me mentally. And then once that started, obviously everything just goes downhill after that. And so I remember one game I was playing shortstop, had like, I'm not kidding, probably 5 errors. And I was like, the world hates me. Like, I don't know what's going on. I shouldn't be here. Like, I don't deserve to be here. And I remember walking in the dugout and I skipped the whole huddle after defense. Like, I walked straight into the dugout and Murph was in there and I was just bawling. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm going to figure this out. I don't know what's going on. I will figure it out. And um, he just gave me a smile and I walked right in the bathroom and like got everything together and walked back out. And then after that, he switched me to second. And then that was like my new role and I loved it because it was new. Like it was like a refresh button for me. Like everything that I was feeling was just gone. And then unfortunately, after a while, I ended up getting hurt and then I was out for the season. And then my next year I did go back to short. But once you're injured, you're just not the same no matter what. And so I took on definitely a different role after that. But yeah, coming in, I had really no idea. I was just hopeful that I could do something I wanted to.
I,
Yeah.
I want to talk about your injury for a minute because we talked in person about that, and that's what drew me to wanting to have you on. You think no matter where you're getting recruited, at what level or what your journey is, you think you're going to go to college and you're going to be the next best thing that ever happens to that university, right? And whatever your story is, no matter how successful you are, you're going to have adversity. So tell us about your injury if you don't mind talking about it, like in your thought process and how it changed you, made you better after that. I mean, you go with where you went with it.
Yeah, so I blew out my whole knee, my ACL, MCL, meniscus, both sides. Um, so there was no no coming back from that. Like I definitely had to have surgery, and unfortunately, it actually happened. It fell on April Fool's, so I got a good kick out of that.
Right.
But
It's
being injured, you feel pretty much like you're nothing, and I don't mean that in a dramatic way. That's just being realistic. Like I went from starting every game of my entire life. Like I always knew. I didn't have to look at the lineup card. I knew I was in it somewhere. And going from that to not even stepping foot on the field because you can't. Like literally I couldn't because I couldn't walk. Even on crutches, they wouldn't let me out there until after I was like somewhat recovered. And then once I was out there, you're just getting passed by in and out because why are you like why should they be concerned when they're playing a game, you know? And it's just you really felt kind of belittled in a way because you just went from everything to nothing. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. Everybody loves you and cares about you, and obviously wanted me out there because I mean, the day it happened, they surrounded me and said that they wanted to win the game for me. Like, I will never forget that. And I was so thankful that I had teammates like that. Um, but it's just how you feel about yourself. And so that was really hard to overcome. And after I'd gotten injured, I feel like the rest of the season was just a blur. I remember just wanting to go to rehab and just be okay. And I just wasn't. And I would go through and we would test my knee for strain to see where I was at and like maybe give a timeline of when, a goal that we could be back. And it would just never go my way. And I would just come back bawling every single day about it. And it was just hard. It was hard and I didn't know why it was happening to me. And finally, I just took a step back after the season got over and I was like, I have to figure this out because I'm going to come back from it. But I need to know, like why. And then finally, obviously, when you're only thinking about you don't have a relationship with Jesus. And then my relationship really just turned and I got really close with him and it didn't become all about me and why, because you'll never know why.
yeah.
And it was just like, this happened to me. How am I going to get through it? And like, how am I going to use it? Because I need to grow from it. And that's when my saying be fearless really came a thing. And I like held on to that and I held on to it for dear life because that's what got me through it. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I changed into a better teammate, one, because I'm the one that's on the sidelines. And I'm like, all right, well, if I'm going to be on the sidelines, I'm going to learn, I'm going to be the best, player to know anything about this game. So I learned anything that you could ever imagine watching games all day long because that's all I was doing. So being a good teammate, learning more about the game, and just kind of like figuring out how to be a leader
Yeah.
because I'm again like I'm on the sidelines. Like nobody's going to want to hear from me when I'm not playing and I'm not in their shoes. So like how am I going to navigate that? And it's just all these small things. And finally when I got the okay that I was cleared, it was like this these boulders just up my shoulders. And it was the most freest thing ever. Now, granted, I was nowhere close. I should not have been playing, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how I did it. Again, it was by the grace of God. And I'm thankful because I don't think I would have lasted another minute not being on that field. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think maybe I was at like 65%.
Wow.
Okay. So um yeah, crazy stuff, but it
Yeah.
all it all worked out.
I really like how you said that too, because I think a lot of times the natural reaction when something goes wrong is, why is this happening to me? Like, why me? And that's totally natural to have, but I like to think too, like you were saying, we get to choose how we respond to it, right? God's the only one that knows why it happens, but the only thing I control is what I decide to do after that. And I think that's just a life thing too, because I always joke, like, adversity doesn't end when you stop playing your sport. It really just pivots and twists. Like, life is a crazy mess.
Yes.
But and I think about that all the time. I'll call my dad and be like, "Why is this never mind. Okay, what are we gonna do?" Like, I'll catch myself. The and you did it to an extreme, and I think that's amazing how you handled it too. And I honestly think people can learn a lot from your story, because it's a natural reaction, but at some point, and I think, God is the best way to do it, turning your faith in him. But I think it's amazing what you did with that and choosing to learn from it, because you either bring people down with you and that's contagious, or people look at you and say, that's so inspiring what she's choosing to do with that, and she's lifting me up now too. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that I was the best teammate at that point either. Like, by all means, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was probably one of the worst, because it was all about me. It was poor, pitiful me. I'm having a pity party in the corner of the dugout, and I'm injured. I'm not even playing. I'm not even mad. Like, I'm just mad that I'm not playing. So I'm not saying I was the best teammate, but I did figure it out. And hopefully that was always my goal, was to have my teammates say that I was there for them. And again, this is why I like talking about it, because maybe I can at least help somebody that will go through it.
And do you feel like it affected your identity at all? Because I feel like when you play a sport that competitively growing up, like people say all the time, half joking, like, this is my life, right? Like, this is who I am. And yes, to a point, but then when something like that happens, that's where it can be a slippery slope, right? I could imagine that gets stripped away. Now what? So I guess, did you experience that at all a little bit? Like, who is Bailey without, being able to step on the softball field right now?
Looking back, I really wish I would have, because that would have got me through it a lot quicker.
Mhm.
And I think that my journey with that was so long because I'm a little bit stubborn. But it's something that, like, I figure out on my own. And if somebody would have told me, like, who are you without softball? I'd have been like, I have no idea. Like, I would have just looked at you like you're crazy, because it's my life. Like, that's why I'm mad.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, within these last couple of years, I've had to figure that out. Like, softball's what I do, it's not who I am. And that's something that Murph always preached all the time, all the time. And I think because that was my freshman year, I never understood that. And once it hit my junior year, like late junior year, I was like, all right, guy, didn't need to figure this out. And then my senior year hit, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm still injured. Like, I have to get surgery in November still because I retore it. But like, with my body, I'm not going to play pro softball. And so I was like, okay, since I'm not going to play anymore, like, who am I without softball? And it just kept like growing and growing. And so I really do wish I would have figured that out then. But at the same time, I wouldn't have gone through all the trials that I did. So in a way, I am thankful, because again, it shaped me into who I am.
Yeah.
It's amazing because when people have adversity slash injury, there's two ways to go about it. You can throw the pity party forever, maybe stop playing, maybe resent it, maybe say shoulda, coulda, woulda, but you seem to, over time, I'm not going to say it happened naturally, but over time and through your faith, you said, you know what? This is going to make me who I am, and I'm going to help others get through things in life. And That's really cool if you think about it.
Yeah, it really does. Like, it makes my heart so happy. Unfortunately, I mean, obviously, these stories aren't the best stories at all. Like, it's very sad. Emotionally, if I was just a little upset right now, I would probably be crying about it. But I'm cool.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, no, that was always my goal. And I remember looking at Murph, my like sophomore going into junior year, and telling him I was like, I'm gonna start talking about this. Like, I'm gonna help girls through this because Claire Jenkins, who was my super senior, and I say mine just because we played the same
Only yours.
position, but she was
Yeah.
mine. um, but I mean, she did the same thing to both of her knees. She did her, I think it was her right one. Maybe it was her left. Before I'd gotten there, and she was just recovering from that. And then once I got hurt, she got hurt, and she did the same thing. But she made it look so easy going through that. And when I'd ask her questions, not that she blew it off, but she again just made it seem like it was easy. And I was like, I'm not going through the same journey that you're going through. Like, somebody help me, please, because I'm drowning. And so, yeah, I remember looking at Murph and telling him, I was like, I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to get it out there because I know somebody else is going to go through what I did. And I don't want them to have to feel as low and go through every feeling of pain that I did. Like, I want to help somebody through that. And he
Yeah.
kind of just looked at me and he was like, okay. And it was kind of like one of those tests, like, we'll see what you do.
I'll
And I
believe
was
it
like,
when I
no,
see
I'm
it.
gonna do it. Like, I'm going to do it. So yeah.
And here you are talking about
Yeah.
it. That's awesome. No, back to your point too. One of the questions that frustrates me most in this world when people ask is, if you could go back in time and change blah blah blah, what which I don't know because I can't do that. Like, I
Yeah, seriously.
I don't know. And I don't want to know because God wrote my journey the way He wrote it, and I'm here to live it, and I don't have the opportunity or the magic wand to go do that. I think the better question maybe is, what perspective do you wish you had going through something you went through? But I don't know, it grinds my gears when people ask me that sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. No, mine too, because like still learning how to just let go of everything and give it to God. Like, I'm a very, I don't want to say control freak, but in a way, I like to have things planned out and I like to know ahead of time what I'm doing. And so if I can control the situation, I'm going to control it. And, that's part of the reason why I'm moving back home to Illinois is because that's just, I've been praying about it a lot and that's just where my heart's telling me to go. And so I'm still trying to figure that out. But yeah, no, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't, there's no answer to that question.
Yeah.
I want to talk Alabama softball for a minute, if that's okay. Do you still stay in touch? I have to call him Coach Murphy. I hear you say Murph. I feel like out of
Yes.
respect, I have to say Coach Murphy.
Yeah.
But do you stay in touch with him, or no? But he's the type of guy. If you needed something, he'd be there in a heartbeat. I mean, for most of us, we just see these people on TV. We don't know much about you or him or anybody.
Yeah, we stay in touch. I'm not gonna act like we talk every single day because that's far from it. But I mean, we've talked a handful of times since I graduated and left Tuscaloosa. Um, and he's actually helped me a lot with a couple things. And so I'm very thankful for him and for that. And one of the coolest stories that I can explain and try to get people to understand it is anybody who is an alumni and graduated from Alabama softball. One, we call it Bama U. You're like part of the Bama U family. So anybody that's Bama U that gets married and has a child, Murph will send the husband a book on how to be a dad. And I just think that's the coolest thing because he knows what every single alumni is doing with their life, whether it's a job, where they're living, who their family is, like whatever. And the fact that he knows that, remembers that, and then like cares enough to send the husband a book like that, that just one means the world to me because I know that he wasn't just like my coach. I mean, he taught me real life situations and who I wanted to be and how to be that person in the world, but he's always there for me. and he's there for everybody else too. And so I think that's really cool. And it's like one of my favorite stories about him.
That makes me so happy to hear. Well, obviously being a dad of two daughters, I mean, I understand that 1,000%. And I think it's sometimes critics will say, well, it's easy for a coach like that to have these characteristics and to be nice because they're getting the best of the best. I look at it differently, not that I'm in his shoes. The reason he's who he is because he doesn't worry about this stuff. It sounds like he worries about the right things and the winning takes care of itself. I mean, not always, that's the sport, but I mean, his record's second to nobody. So I think that's really cool to hear stories like that.
Yeah, and I love it. And I actually told whenever people ask me, like, was Alabama really like, did I like it? Did I love it? And I was like, yes. I don't think y'all understand. Like Oklahoma, my 4 years of college, they won every single national championship. They were literally a four-peat. My whole career, they won every single time. And this is no hate. This is no hate against Oklahoma. I was thankful for my journey that, took me there growing up. But once it hit twice every year, I was like, please, somebody else win it. It doesn't have to be us, but just somebody else. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, clearly we did not win a national championship. We went to the World Series 3 out of 4 times, but we didn't win. And I still wouldn't trade that for my experience that I got at Alabama
Well,
over anything.
speaking of, I think something a lot of listeners would like to hear, because I know there's a lot of like young softball players who listen to this podcast. What was it like playing in the Women's College World Series? I'm sure you get that question a ton, but I have to ask it just on behalf of everybody listening.
It was completely crazy. And I feel like I only got, well, I mean, again, I went there 3 out of 4 times, but my first year I was hurt. That was my freshman year. So again, I'm in the corner. Like I don't mean anything, like I'm just there for the cool stuff and like cheer on our team. Um, no, I was a good teammate at that point.
Okay.
Don't um, but no, and then let's see, my junior year, that was crazy because Montana's hurt and we're
That's
just
right.
thankful to be there at that point. We're like, okay,
I
this is
remember
sweet.
that.
Like we got here. That's all we wanted was to send Montana and Allie and Prangy and everybody else, like out of the World Series. And then my senior year, obviously being my senior year, everything hit me like a truck. But I feel like that was my first real experience because I got interviewed. We got like all the cool stuff, the Nike swag bags, and probably only say that because I really soaked everything in. But yeah, no, it was like my childhood dream. I mean, people always say they envisioned or like could picture them playing there, but I never did. I just loved playing. And I was like, my dream is Alabama. That's it. And so like getting there and playing and like being out on the field, because my junior year when we went, it only hit. I wasn't playing defense. And then this last year I got the whole package. I was playing defense and hitting. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like I had no idea how big this stadium was. Like, I've been out here, but I felt like a little dot on like a huge board. It was insane. But it was so cool. It was so cool.
Was there a moment when you stepped out on the field for the first inning, you just kind of looked around and were like, whoa?
I'm not gonna lie, I had butterflies. I always get butterflies in big games. So like once we hit SECs on, I get butterflies. But I always found a way to like make them all fly in the right direction. I don't know how, but I did.
That's great. That's great.
And
I love that.
and so I think I really got that like holy cow moment out of my system when we had practice because there were still reporters, cameras everywhere when you were at practice on field because you only got like I don't even know if it was a whole hour on the field. It may have been like 45 minutes. Um, so I kind of got that out at practice. And then once we got out there for the game, I was like, I'm in my zone. Like we're gonna win.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really don't know how to explain it. It was the coolest moment and probably the most freeing I've ever felt too. It was pretty weird.
So cool.
A question about SEC softball. I mean, obviously that's the probably the pinnacle conference, right? I mean, you're going to be biased to it, but I think it's true. Do you get to know the other girls? Do you become friends with them, or why? Or is that something after playing, or is do you all understand there's a greater good to it all? I mean, any stories like that, or don't you think about it too much?
So new. I mean, before college, if you're on all the travel ball teams, like the known ones, you you played with pretty much everybody that was at that high level. And so once it got to like postseason, you know everybody that you're playing against, you know everybody that's in postseason. That's just kind of how it is. And especially when you get older, like my freshman year, I remember them like we would go over lineups and I would know a handful of girls, but I want to know the whole lineup or like say they have a stud pitcher that's, like a junior that's 3 years older than me. I had no idea. I only know girls that were like 1 or 2 years older than me. But then by my senior year and like junior year, you know everybody. And I don't like to talk to people when we're playing a series at all, whether we're friends or not. I'm like, we're enemies today.
Yeah, don't talk to
I'm gonna
me.
I'm gonna beat you. I'm sorry. We can talk later after my team wins, but not right now. Um, but yeah, no, I did not talk to people, and I don't know if that's like a good trait or a bad trait. I was just so competitive that whether we were friends or not, once that game started, it was on. For the game, we were cool. We could go have dinner, hang out, whatever. But yeah, no, I was not. I was the one who would get mad at my teammates, who would be talking to the girls on the other team. I was like, you need to get it together because we're not friends right now. Like, but yeah, no, it was pretty surreal once you got to the World Series and you were like, oh, I know, I played with her and her and her and her and her, and it was cool.
Wow. Another question I have for you too. How much mental training did you do at Alabama? Was that something that was new to you, after high school? Because I think that's a huge buzzword in the softball community, right? You need to be mentally tough. But I don't think a lot of girls know exactly what that means or give it the necessary time that they should probably give it.
Yeah, so I love this because uh, we had a amazing sports psychologist. His name was Dr. McCabe, and I loved him to death. I think that I could probably like DM him on Twitter right now, and we would be best friends. I'm not gonna lie. That's how many times we would hang out a week. Um, we were buddies. But yeah, no, I knew I did a little bit of like mental training, you could say, before college, the summer going into it, but it wasn't to the extent that I should have done or that I realized I would need to have in college. And so, especially after being hurt, I that was the first thing I did when I was hurt. Um, was get one, a normal therapist to talk about my daily life because again, I'm injured. Like that was a huge change. But then also our sports psychologist because I'm still a part of the team. Like I
Yeah.
still have to talk about that too. Um, and I feel like people just really judge when you say like therapist, and it's not bad. Like if you want to, I truly believe if you want to grow as a human and like be the best that you can be, you have to be able to talk about things that you've gone through, whether it's what you've gone through, your dreams, goals, whatever, how you're going to do it, anything. And once I really realized that, that's when I changed. And then I really started going to our sports psychologist like all the time. And I feel like that's really when I grew as a leader too, was talking to him and talking with him through things and all of that jazz. But yeah, no, I told my teammates all the time, I was like, you guys need to be going to him because I swear this is why I'm going 2 for 3 in a game right now. Like he is the
Yeah.
reason. It's not anything to do with the physical part of the game. It's just him. Um, but yeah, no, I tell people all the time that when they're in college, they need to go be talking to somebody. It literally just somebody. It doesn't even have to be a sports psychologist.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, that was probably one of the greatest and smartest decisions I made in college was doing that.
And I think to your point, I think going to someone like that makes you incredibly strong because a lot of people don't want to open up like that and they're scared of it. So to sit down and face that, I think makes you strong. To your point, and I agree, sometimes you say therapist and things like that, and people are like, oh, like, what's going on? But I've said it, I think every student actually athlete should talk to, the counseling center or a sports psychologist or somebody at some point in your career because everybody has something going on. Everybody does. And I think it's so impactful when you can talk about it and not get over something, but get through it the right way.
Yes. Yeah.
It's hard because in this day and age, if you go on Twitter, Instagram, or whatever social media young girls use, everything's a highlight reel, right? And they're always putting forward their best foot. But how do you? It's a game of failure. Let's get it out there. So how are they
Yeah.
dealing with the non-highlight stuff? And you're watching that. I'm great. I'm doing all this, but I'm sure he was equally helpful in an 0 for 3 game. I mean, that's right. Not that I'm saying you had any of those, but
Never.
No. Oh man, I had plenty. No. Yeah, I mean, I remember I remember being in the SEC tournament and I was so nervous. I had all these crazy thoughts in my head and I just called up our sports psychologist and I was like, "Hey, I don't know what's going on with me right now, but I need you to talk through something. Like just tell me something because I'm going crazy. Like I don't even know if I can get out there right now." And didn't didn't change anything. I'm not kidding you. I went 0 for 5, 5 strikeout. My sixth at bat because we went into extra innings. I hit the game winning run and just was like picturing like Holly Rowe interviewing me at the end of the game. And it was the craziest thing. But like just the smallest things, like calling him didn't help me at all. But like it still did something. And like you can still change your outcome or like I mean, who goes 0 for 5 and then hits the game winning run? Like, if I'm going 0 for 5, I'm like, please, Murph, take me out of the game. Like, I do not deserve to be here right now. Like, please, I don't want to go up there. You could see it. You could see it. If you watch me on TV, I bet you could look at me and be like, she's going to strike out right now. And then all of a sudden I hear the game running around. That makes no sense. But like, it's just the smallest things of, talking it through and then like realizing that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And going back to what you were saying, like it's a game of failure. You don't, it's like how you overcome it and like how you respond to it.
I think
And people just don't understand that.
No, and to your point, I think too, that's what makes softball so mentally tough. I don't want to compare to other sports, but I think this is unique to softball where it's so hard not to carry your emotion from like one at bat to the next one. You have to think of them as independent events, and it is so hard to do. But if you go 0 for 4, you're completely right. You're like, this one is independent of all that. Like, I just need to go up there with the same confidence, same mindset, and it is so hard to do. And it's like that in life too. If you're having a crappy day and you have something really important to do at night, it's an independent event. Like you have to learn how to make them, different cubes in your head. And I think it's so tough, but it really sets you up for success in life too.
Yeah, definitely.
So Bailey, I know you're moving back to Illinois.
Yeah.
Tell us, are you giving back to the game in any way? Do you plan to stay involved in the game? What are your future plans? I mean, it's such a whirlwind when you stop playing.
Yeah, so I'm still planning on doing lessons and clinics and uh, getting everything set up and scheduled to do my own camp at home. And I've been helping Montana, like we talked about. We met at Montana's camp. Hopefully, we can get something scheduled with doing a camp with Montana at home. But for now, I'm setting up everything to do mine. And I have a place. It's actually, again, how awesome my dad is. He built me a shop and it has turf and hitting, batting cage, and all that good stuff in there. And so since high school, I've always been able to give lessons out of there. And so that's where I'm going to do mine. And so I'm very excited just to kind of give back to the game, but also just help girls from my small town be able to chase their softball dreams too. Because being from a small town, again, I talked about earlier, it's hard to just kind of get out of it and see the world. And I want them to know that they can. So that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. So
Is,
cool.
is there is how does somebody reach out to you if they wanted any type of mental training or to talk or something like that?
They can direct message me or private message me on Facebook. If you just search my name, Bailey Dowling, you should be able to find me. I'm in the process of getting my website and everything set up for that, so I'm very excited. I mentioned earlier that I still have to get surgery because I retore my knee this last season. So I get to get that done first, and then I'm really getting into all of my lessons and camps and everything. So uh, it'll be a quick turnaround, but I'm very excited to get home. And I've been giving virtual lessons, and then mental talk while I've been here in Florida. And so I'm excited to see the girls that I've been helping.
Yeah,
I like how you caught yourself and said
I
get to.
know.
I use that all the time, and I'm like, when you said have to, I'm like, wait, and you corrected yourself. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
But that's important.
Yeah.
That's important to be able to do that because there's nothing fair or fun about it. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't tear my knee myself. So it's just something I get to go through.
Yeah, awesome. Well,
Well,
thank
this
you
was
so much for coming on. Yeah, this was so much fun. We appreciate your
Of
time and
course.
everything you had to share. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me. And I'm so glad that I got to meet you at Montana's camp and it brought me to meet you. So I really
Yes,
appreciate it.
yeah,
absolutely.
it was really cool. And I've been getting a lot of slack from my friends at how much taller y'all are over me.
Yeah,
I'm like,
Oh gosh.
I don't know. I think they're way in front and I'm behind, I think. And the girls on my high school team, they're just every day they're just giving it to me. I'm like, never mind. I wasn't even there. It's not, but no,
It's
it
the
was
Alabama water.
it was
Mm.
no, it was so much fun to learn from y'all there. It was the impact you have on young girls. I mean, I know but it's amazing. It's really cool. It's really cool to see that for 2 days up front.
Yeah, no, we have a blast doing it. And it's us doing what we love, getting to be with our best friends, and then obviously helping girls through their journey. So couldn't ask to do anything better.
Well,
Yeah.
Bailey, thanks for coming on.
Yes.
Thank you guys again. Appreciate it.
All right, see ya.